All right, David, this one's for you. So in this one, I'm going to be making a template. As you can see, I still got some lovely old crusty, flaky steel in there, also known as rot. But I'm going to use a tape template to make this shape. So sit back and watch. So, just like the tape we got at school, actually. I grabbed this from school so you can see I can use the same tape you guys use. Not that I'm using anything special. I have a straight edge at the top here. I can check it by using a straight edge. That's a pretty straight corner. I don't need to worry about having to cover that and then sand it and then try and cut it out later. I'm going to bring my tape right to that. See how it falls in? I don't want it to fall in when I go to do this, but I know it will because it's at the right height. So I push the tape down where the steel is, not where the steel isn't. I'm not trying to push that in. And that one piece of tape looks like it covers all my cuts. So now we get, in this case, this is a peel-off China marker. I don't really have many pencils floating around here. And unfortunately, I broke the tip on this, so we gotta deal with me while I work my way through this. Try and speed the process up a little bit. Notice I'm cutting away from my fingers, not towards. Last thing I need to do is get in a fight with a razor blade over a piece of paper. Sorry for this delay, guys. I was not expecting to be, well, dealing with this right now. I guess I broke it pretty far down when it broke. So now I have an end to work with. And all I'm going to do is rub back and forth where I know that edge is. And what it does is when the pencil, or in this case the China marker, hits the edge of the steel, it makes a trace line. Not sure if that's coming in clear where you are, so I'm going to bring it in. So everywhere the edge of the steel is, well, get that to focus better, and get my hand out of the way. So everywhere the edge of the steel is, it made a dark line. So that allowed me to make a template of exactly where the steel is. Now I still got to contend with making this hole. This is the faceplate on the front of the car, and the bumper bolts through here. So I have to make that hole again. I can't just make this a solid piece of steel. I got to reposition that hole. And being I'm not cut below here, I really only have to make half a hole. And there's a couple different tricks that I'll show you with that. But let's get into the rest of this. So now we got our shape minus the hole. Now, in order to save some time, I did pre-cut a general. I had made a paper tape template already, and fortunately I don't know what oh, there it is. So that tape template, which is a little larger than what we have there, was used to give me a general cut, so I knew what I was cutting from the piece of steel. Now I can take this tape template, which we know is the exact sizing of that hole, and I can put one over the other or vice versa, however I want to do it. In this case, I have the hole predetermined. I've already made that with the other one. And you can see if I line it up with this side, so there's the line in it. Now I line it up because that makes the top square as well. We can see I got a little bit of overage here. That little overage there and that little overage down there. Overage is extra steel, stuff I have to cut off of it. Same thing with down here. So I got more here to come off and over there. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I would freehand this myself just because I've done it enough. But starting off and learning, you're going to have to build these skills. They don't just come free. They come with experience. So I can take a straight edge and I can hold it over it like this. So now I have my steel that's extra. I can use a scribe, or I can use a China marker, a pen, pencil works sometimes. So in this case, I'll use the China marker. Now it's probably very hard for you guys to see that. I don't know if it comes in clear on the phone, but you can see a little bit of a faint line. So all I'm going to do is take my cutters. And I'm going to cut right on that line. I didn't cut to the outside, leaving a little extra, because I know that's the right size. So if I left the extra line, that means I left extra material. I need less material. So I want to take the line with me or cut right on the line. That gets rid of any extra material. I take my template back again. I line up my edges. Now look at that. I'm fitting just inside the line. So if I move this inward, I can see the edges coming up both sides. So that means this is the right width. I've got this part down. Now let's work on the length. I can do it by using this, or I can also, now that I know width-wise it's about right, go, okay, look, there's my extras. Take my China marker, line it up because I have a cut mark right there, so I know exactly where that is. And I have a cut mark right here, which tells me where that is. I'm not sure if that's truly correct, so I'm going to cut a little further down. Just in case I messed up, I can always trim off a little extra steel a lot quicker than I can add it back on. So I line up my cut lines. Now remember, when I'm cutting here, I don't want to cut there. I only want to cut this one side. So I'm not going to shove it all the way in, because when I clamp down, I can mistakenly cut the wrong side. I'm going to clamp out here where the edges of my shears are further enough away from any other steel. Cut that right off. Now I'll come around. I still have my line on this side. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to cut the line. I'm not going to leave the line. And now that we know we're getting close to fitting, I'm going to round my edges. It'll weld easier and get a better corner with a slightly tapered edge in the corners. I'm not talking like huge chunks. I'm talking just the itty bittiest little extra space for that filler weld to get in. Trim that little excess floating on the side. Now I can come back in and I can fit it again. As you can see, that hole really that ain't good. I never claimed to be a master hole creator, but I usually like to do better than that. Now, its purposing is I can always grind this back. I can use a rotary grinder and grind back this and make it a circle, which I'm going to do, but I don't want to have to grind all that extra steel. I want to grind a lot less. Oh, dropped it. Forgot my marker. So in order to make this a little bit less of a hassle, there it is back in place. Honestly, this side can come down. Oh, I switched it up on myself. There it is back in place. So you see how I made that mistake of swinging it back and forth? I should probably do something to make it easier for me to see and understand. I'm going to write F on it for front. This way I know everything I do there moving forward, I should be able to see that F facing me. So I can see I got a little bit of a fitment issue here. This side has to be trimmed a little more. So I'm going to mark it there because I'm going to trim it so it sits a little more like that. Because right now it's kind of wedging itself. And with me trimming that, I also have to trim a touch off of this top corner. And the way I know that is, I can see where I have gaps in between the steel, and I can see where the steel of the piece I'm making and the steel of the car are overlapping or touching each other. Right now I'm still in trim mode, so all I'm doing is trimming away. And then we also have to trim up a little more of this circle. Now in this case, I know I'm not trimming nearly enough to get all the way to that hole, so I'm not worried about it. If I was trying to trim a lot closer to the precision size, I would get something round that is that diameter. I would hold it over the bottom of this, marking the outer edges of my circle, and I would find where it lines up, and then I would draw that perfect circle. In this case, I already know I'm going to use a rotary to come in here and round it to match it. I can get away with just taking small little pie cuts out of this to get me closer to that full circle size. And this is a challenge, guys. If you ever want to try a challenging task, cutting a circle out of steel using tin snips. Because you can only use the very tip, and you have to be able to kind of muscle it over as you go. That was actually pretty good, guys. They don't always come out that clean. So that gives me a little bit more of that hole. That'll be much easier for me to get a grinder in there and get it to the right dimensions. So now we're going to take care of our other two little cuts. that might have been a little bit big of a cut. I don't think I wanted to make that big of a cut. Yeah, it was a little large of a cut. Still be able to filler weld it, but now this is sitting in a lot more. Now I got to go for this inner edge over here. I'm not even going to make a mark. I can see what I got to cut. That should come off relatively easily. There we go. There, now it sits in on all corners. I'm not going to bore you with the next few parts. I still have a lot of cleanup in here. I got some flaky rust still sitting on this edge. And I got to make sure this inner piece of metal is good, because if this has got any porosity to it, I'm not interested in it coming back. I will cut out that inner piece of sheet metal. That's all it is. This outer is 16. This outer is 18 gauge, and the inner is 16 gauge. So it's just sheet metal here. Honestly, the bumpers in the 70s were, on unibody cars anyway, were pretty much a joke. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.